A recent study on CNN showed that about 3/4 of people in the U.S. are living paycheck to paycheck with little to no emergency savings. Today, personal finance commentator Preet Banerjee is here to teach all of us how to be a little smarter with our money, especially with those with families. Welcome, Preet. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. So you are a money expert. And we are not money experts.
Okay.
Did you figure that out?
You know what? Probably 99% of people are money experts, so it's okay.
But you want to empower people to what? To feel better about how they deal with their finances? To be less intimidated by finances?
Yeah, I want to empower them to be less intimidated because I think a lot of people do nothing because they think they have to get everything figured out first. And they're bombarded by all these messages about the stock markets, what's going on in Europe, and that stuff isn't really that important. It's the basic things that people need to do to get right in order to have financial freedom.
And it's interesting, and I'm curious to know, why do you believe people are living paycheck to paycheck?
Well, you know what? It's because no one's tough on themselves like other people are with your money. So, for example, if you're a renter and your landlord came to you one day and said, rent is going up by $50 a month, you'd probably be kind of angry about that for a while. But you probably wouldn't move. You'd find a way to pay that extra $50. And after a couple of months, that would be your new normal. So no one's coming to you and saying, listen, you need to save $50 per month. You have to be tough on yourself, and people don't want to be tough on themselves.
So you're saying that it begins with self-discipline? Absolutely.
So an analogy I always give is a personal trainer. So people know what they have to do to be in better shape. They know they have to eat clean, they have to work out a little bit. And when they hire a personal trainer, they get fantastic results. Not because the trainer shows them a fancy new way of doing a sit-up. They just make you do the sit-up that you knew you were supposed to do. So what I'm trying to tell people is, well, what's the equivalent of a clean diet and working out a little bit when it comes to your money?
That sounds so simple. It sounds deceptively simple.
It does.
But, you know, I can do sit-ups, but I don't. So you're right. The idea that you need somebody to help you with that. So do you do this for people, or do you have staff that does that?
I used to be a practicing financial advisor. I don't deal with individuals anymore, but I write about it and I talk about it on television shows. And so, you know, you need to think about, you know, well, what intuitively makes sense. So one of the things I tell people is, listen, you probably think that being good with money means having an investment portfolio and having a plan for when you're 65. But I'll say, listen, well, what about what happens between now and 65? You get hit by a bus, right? Do you have kids? Do you have a will? And you'd be surprised how many people have families with children and don't have wills. And everyone knows that they're supposed to have a will, right? So again, it's about those equivalents of, well, what's like eating a clean diet and what's like going to the gym on a regular basis.
Okay, but that word will, when I think about it, and I think about someone who's on a level of living in an urban community.
Right.
That word doesn't even exist, will. It's scary. How can we bring that to a level where someone or anyone out there who's watching can even have that conversation? And how do you begin to have that conversation?
And it seems to me it's the same conversation in a sense about saving money. We know we're supposed to do things. Why don't we? Well, in a way, I would say most people in America, we're busy. And we're living paycheck to paycheck. We're kind of keeping up. So things like, you know, having a will or doing these things we know we should seems like a luxury. How do you get people to see it as a necessity?
Well, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people learn the lesson the hard way. Either something bad happens to them and their family, or they hear about a story of someone else who's had some kind of tragedy. And so here's an example. I mean, this can happen. It's date night, you're out with your spouse, and the kids are at home. You get into a car accident, one of you dies, one of you becomes incapacitated. What happens? I mean, have you even assigned a guardian to take over your children's care? Does the guardian have access to funds to be able to raise your child in a way that you want to? So these are all things that you have to face, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's just something that has to be done. That's part of being an adult, part of having a family.
Now, who makes these decisions? Is there one person in a family that does it? Do couples do it together? What do you suggest?
It depends on the family. A lot of families, when it comes to money or talking about anything about that, can be a pretty heated debate sometimes. So what I would suggest is, listen, you're probably not going to be able to figure it out yourself, so talk to a lawyer. That's what they do. Say, listen, I just need to pick up the phone and book a meeting with a lawyer, and then they can walk you through the steps when it comes to things like estate planning.
But when someone doesn't even have money to get into speaking to a lawyer, how can we start at an early age and teaching about finances, especially to children? Like, both of us are parents. I have a 1.5-year-old, and I'm already thinking when she can understand that concept.
Right.
So what are the tools in teaching children about finances?
Well, as an extreme example, what I suggest for people to do as adults, they could maybe do with children, that's crash testing your life. So maybe it doesn't have to be something as morbid as a car accident, but maybe you lose your job, right? So what would be the similarity to a child losing an income? It would be a loss of an allowance. So maybe say, hey, you know what? I'm cutting off your allowance, because sometimes that happens in the real world. And see what happens, right? And then you can have a conversation about that. You don't want to be cruel about it and deny them allowance for years and years, but make it a teachable moment for them, because that could happen to you as an adult. And so you can have a conversation with your child.
So let it be experiential, that if you know, even putting money away, right? If I give my daughter $10, I will take $2 away from you, so that way she can understand the concept.
Well, they'll understand the concept of tax then if you do that.
Ah, I like that. I'm going to tax my daughter, tax her kids.
That would be $4, but I live in New York, be $5. Okay, I was reading that there are 5 tips that you have, 5 basic tips. Would you share those with us, kind of go through them?
Yeah, very simple stuff. If you do these 5 things, you're going to be better off than 80% of the people around you. Number 1, disaster-proof your life. So again, this means...
That's what you're talking about.
Do the
will,
crash test, right?
Insurance,
That's
whatever.
number 1.
Yep.
Number 2 is you got to spend less than you earn. So think about being that landlord to yourself. Set up an automatic savings plan. The worst thing that will happen after a couple months is you've got a couple $100s sitting in a savings account, right? So try it and see what happens. And most people find that they'll adapt to it just like a higher rent. Third thing you have to do is you have to aggressively pay down credit card debt. So according to the Federal Reserve in November of 2012, the average American household that carried credit card debt carried $15,000 worth of it. If you had that your whole life, that's $210,000 of interest potentially that you're spending just by carrying a balance on your credit card. Think of all the things you could buy with $210,000 more dollars. Rule number 4, always read the fine print. A lot of people sign contracts blindly, and one of the biggest complaints I get from people are complaints that maybe they shouldn't have because they've signed their name to a legally binding contract. And I said, well, you signed, you agreed to do this, so read everything, no matter how small the print is. And in fact, maybe you want to flip to the back and read back to front, because that's where all the gotchas are. And then number 5 is just delaying consumption. One of the things that we always see is people have a lot of stuff in their house, and it just gathers dust. And we accumulate so many things, we think we need it, but we never sometimes use some of these things more than once or twice. And so a lot of people, they accumulate, and they get to the stage where they want to get rid of stuff and declutter. So just don't even go there. Just stop accumulating stuff that you don't need.
All this stuff, it's amazing. It sounds so basic. It's so commonsensical, but we don't do it.
It's like trying to get to the gym, right?
Thank you for reminding us of these things.